Hey y'all, it's Coach in the Fight here. I was just thinking of a quick class here um, that we could do, and giving a little bit of testimony here. Um, so I was having a moment where I was feeling a little bad, concerning the ministry. Anybody who is trying to do something knows what I mean when things seem to go should be going better and they aren't. So I was one night I found myself um, asking for the Lord for some guidance and some information, and and He led me to a website. Y'all watch for images. I'm gonna try to take them out, but I know some of them slipped through. So what I did was I searched for 144,000. I did a search for 144,000 on the web. Now what came up was this stuff like this. Now you notice I don't have the images here, so I can't see exactly which one it was, but it was a short one. Let's say if I did a filter here and look for the view count, it's probably one of these. If you have any of these 10 characteristics, you're one of the 144,000 light workers, blah blah blah. And so I was looking at this video, and it kept referencing other books. Now it kept referencing verses that I weren't really familiar with, but I thought I had read. So I went and looked through my library trying to find this book, and I didn't find it. And so I went back in the video. Let me see, I might be able to show a little bit of the video.
144,000 prophesized light workers that will save the world. You are always identifying with heroic characters and superheroes.
Well, anyway, so it kept giving references in it. And when I tried to find it, I ended up finding that it was a whole another book on the Bible, on the Third Testament of the Bible. This is what I found. That there's a whole Third Testament of a New Testament of the Bible, Third Testament. Okay, so of course I did my research. I've gone through it a few times, but we're gonna give a little short class on this little book, like an introduction here. We want to give praise and honor to our Father, our Creator, who gives us, the knowledge and gave us the books first of all. We give Him honor for that, and giving us the ability to share it, hear it, learn from it.
There's many things man is chasing after. They got some questions, we got some answers.
Yeah, we got some answers. This is Coach in the Fight, y'all. Alright, we're looking here at the second coming of Christ. This is the first chapter, or the first, I don't know. It's not. Yeah, it's the first section. This is the first part. I think this book is written in 3 parts, and the first part has, I can't remember how many chapters. We'll look and see. All right, so let's look at some of these here, and maybe we could just do a little glimpse of the books. That you can find the whole book here. The whole book is listed here. At least it's the same translation as that translation that's found on the, what's the name? Let me show you here. Should I play? Yeah, let me play. Yeah, this is an introduction, so I'm gonna go ahead and play chapter 1, and we'll do that.
Chapter 1. waiting for the second coming of Christ. Introductory perspective to the sacred event. In the beginning of time, the world was without love. The first men were far from feeling or understanding that divine force, that essence of the Spirit, the principle of all creation. They believed in God, but attributed to Him only strength and the power of justice. They believed that they understood the divine language through the elements of nature, so that when they saw them peaceful and serene, they believed the Lord to be pleased with the works of men. But when the elements were unleashed, they believed they saw in them the manifested anger of God. In the heart of man, an image had formed of a terrible God, capable of anger and the desire for revenge. So that when they believed they had offended Him, they offered holocausts and sacrifices in the hope of placating Him. I tell you that those offerings were not inspired by their love of God, but the fear of a divine justice and fear of punishment were what inspired those first people to offer tribute to their Lord. The divine spirit they called only God, never Father or Teacher. It was the patriarchs and the first prophets who began to make men understand that God was justice, yes, but the perfect justice. That He was first of all Father, and that as Father, He loved all His creatures. Step by step, walking slowly on the path of spiritual evolution, humanity continued its pilgrimage, passing from one era to another, and learning a bit more of the divine arcane through revelations that God gave His children in every era. Still, man did not arrive at a complete understanding of the divine love, for he did not truly love God as a father, nor did he feel in his heart the love his Lord gave him at every step. It was necessary for the perfect love to be made man, that the Word be made flesh, and be transfigured to a form visible and tangible to men, for them to finally know how and how much God loved them. Not everyone recognized the presence of the Father in Jesus. How could they recognize Him if Jesus was humble, compassionate, and loving even with those who offended Him? They saw God as strong and proud before His enemies, harsh and terrible with those who offended Him. But just as many denied, many also believed those words that penetrated to the most hidden reaches of the heart. That way of healing incurable ills and illnesses with a mere caress, a look of infinite compassion, and a word of hope. And in that teaching, that was the promise of a new world, a life of light and justice that could not be erased from the many hearts of those who understood that divine matter, the divine love of He whom men did not know, and therefore could not love.
Alright, let's look at it here. This thing is hard to manage. See how it's doing? I'm not touching anything, it just took off by itself. It's going crazy. And I don't know if the Lord is doing it, or I believe it's this wacky computer, but you know. Alright, let's jump down here. Let's take a random verse out of here. We just jumped to this page. And the first thing my eyeballs hit was Elijah, right? So let's just go down and see what this one says. I don't even know what chapter we in. Man, these itchy spots. It is not. That itchy is not. Alright. Verse 50. Elijah is the ray of God, whose light comes to dissipate the darkness and liberate you from the slavery of this time, which is sin, and who will guide your spirit through the desert until you arrive at the promised land in the bosom of God. Man, see, this is what you read right here. Now, I don't know what that number is, 236. We about to end this with this right here, because this is huge. This is an all-day class right here on this verse, because you have to understand who Elijah is. Now, understanding that there's some people who are brand slam new here. Elijah is the guy who went up against Jezebel. I heard about Jezebel in the Bible. She was the lady that the dogs ate. She killed all of the prophets of the Lord. She, had all of the prophets of Baal. She ran the king. She was a pretty tough lady. Elijah was the prophet that went up against her. Now he says Elijah is the ray of God. Now ray, you have to understand what that word is. I believe you need to find. I can't say go back to the Hebrew because this was written in Mexico. I heard the word Mexico when that thing was reading. So ray in this case, would imply something to do with light. Now that one needs to be expounded upon, but let's move on. Whose light comes to dissipate the darkness. Okay, now the darkness, I'd like to hear other people what they would say about darkness, because I can't remember what I used to think darkness was. I'm serious, I don't remember what I used to think darkness was, but darkness is talking about when you don't see that inner light, that light of God, that spirit of God. If you sitting there now and you don't know what light I'm talking about, you are in darkness. You are in darkness. And probably statistically speaking, you are in darkness, because he plans to turn on everybody's light at the same time. You know what I'm saying? He's going to flip the switch. For the majority, there will be a lot of people, especially people who are reading this book, whose lights are going to get turned on now. But for those who are not in the scripture, those who, for the other, 96% of the population, their light will get turned on at one time. That's what he mean by every eye shall see him. And liberate you from the slavery of this time. See, everybody knows we're living in slavery. The only ones who don't want to admit that we're living in slavery are the ones who are the most enslaved. If you don't know that we're enslaved, golly, man. If you don't know that you got to get up and go to that job that's a slave, you are. It's big, and it's not your fault. The reason why you don't understand is because they changed the word. Every time you see the word servant in the Bible, replace that with slave. We are God's slaves. He called us slaves in the Bible. They just changed it to servants. We're the servant of God. No, we're the slave of God. And so when you say if we're the slave of God, and you can start to see that we're actually not really the slave of God as much as we are the slave of man. And he comes to relieve us of that. That slavery of man comes because of, we have to have currency for food, clothing, and shelter and such. Okay. Let's move on. Which is sin. Forget everything I just said for the last 3 minutes. Did I read this thing first? Okay, let's stop. Let's back up. Whose light comes to dissipate the darkness and to liberate you from the slavery of this time, which is sin. Okay, so he's saying that the slavery of this time is sin. And I understand why he wrote that like this, because it's written for future tense too. See, we ain't gonna always have this job. We may have this book, but we ain't gonna always have this slavery. And so in the future, any kind of sin is going to be a slave, and it's because it's really going to bear down on us, not like it does now. I mean, you can't mass down on, we're so low right now we can't feel it. But when we start to spread our wings, you know what I'm saying, like that eagle, you think that eagle ever like being on the ground? Well, you know what I'm saying? Our sin is what's going to bring us back down to the ground. And then, so that'll be like a bondage, like a slavery. It's like chains on us when we can't fly because, we, did that unclean thing, or we had something to do with some kind of abomination, that's talked about in the book of Leviticus and, all of that. But let's go on. Let's say we're going to shut this one down. And who will guide your spirit through the desert? Okay. Now, the spirit. You got God, spirit, desert. Okay, now see that this is what's so different about this Third Testament. You could give a whole sermon, not on this verse, but you can go inside this verse and just talk about any one of these three words right here, and just talk the whole thing. You know what I'm saying? God, Spirit, or desert. So Elijah is the guide, right? The guide. You got to understand, we're about to go through some tribulous times, and the Lord put guides here. He put guides here. There's several kinds of guides. There's all kinds of guides that's gonna be here. There's gonna be some false guides here, and you can tell the false guides by their fruit. That's how you know. Look at the fruit, you know. And so Elijah is coming back. He says Elijah is the ray of God, whose light comes, and right here as so you could jump down here. You could say Elijah will guide your spirit through the desert until you arrive at the promised land. Let me read that again. Elijah will, let me see, I will highlight it, but I'm afraid to throw that little wicked thing up there. So you got Elijah up here. Y'all see that? Y'all probably see all of this. Yeah, I remember that other one. But you say that and right there, so just come straight down here. It says Elijah, well, Elijah will guide your spirit through the desert. So he will be the guide. Now, that's a whole class in itself, the guide. Now, you can study the 144,000. You can study the other guide spirits that come back, like what was the guy's name that helped bear the cross? He's gonna be there with him. I can't Simeon, Simon. Okay, I can't remember. Your spirit guides your spirit. Now, see, here's the big deal about what's going on, guys. Is this is spiritual? See, I ain't never thought about it from this level. I don't know about nobody else. I know all them people who, you know, into all of that, you know, spiritual stuff, know about the spiritual. They know something. I don't. My conscience always kept me away from stuff like that. Not saying that it was wrong. It's just that wasn't my area. You know, I studied numbers. I studied mathematics. You know, I didn't study this. So this is coming from way out there for me. But you know, I'm understanding, you know, quickly that it's about the reprioritization from the material to the spiritual. And, you know, that's what this book is about. That's what this era is about. That's what this tribulation is about. This tribulation, the Lord is taking the opportunity He's taking the opportunity to enlighten us with His Spirit. And the blessed thing about it is it's going to come from within. You ain't got to worry about, you know, following, you know, Coach in the fight nowhere, go and visit Coach in the fight, or, you know, missing my YouTube channel when it goes down. You just really need to get your hands on this book. You really need to put your eyeballs on this book now. That's, you know what I mean? And there's some other books too. Don't forget about Herman's. Don't forget about the Bible. I ain't forget about, you know what I'm saying, Genesis 1 and 1. You know what I'm saying? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You know what I'm saying? You got to get the scripture. Okay, but back to this Elijah dude. Let me get this closed out. I believe we're gonna do this uncut too, so because it's so long. He's like, what? Who will guide your spirit through the desert? Okay, now the desert is where we're at now. We're in the desert now, and it's not really a material desert. You have to think spiritual desert, because when you also think about this promised land down here too, until you arrive at the promised land. And the promised land is going to be on the other end of the tribulation. You know, any of you pre-trib guys, you know, I will gladly bust your bubble. I ain't gonna sit here and act like I ain't gonna sit here and play you. You ain't gonna be able to sit here and party and you know, do all you want to do, and then all of a sudden the Lord gonna come and get you and put you on some cloud somewhere so you can look down on the rest of us while we get our butts kicked, while you sitting up there, you know, in heaven, You know, I guess what you still eating pork up there? I don't know what you think you're gonna be doing, but you know, no, you're gonna be down here with us. In fact, I ain't gonna go into all that, but you know, I just say appreciate you for playing your part. See you next round. That's what I'm gonna say. Read the book. You know what I'm saying? Read the book. This is seriously the book. All right, we're gonna go ahead and end it there, y'all. May peace be with you. Hermes Academy. Power, patience, continence, and faith. We teach virtue.